it's anything you can imagine at the time that we sold in gas stations and little, what we might call convenience stores now, but they were still very much general stores and shops yet at this time. This is the lawn area next to and behind Kroll's Tavern and House and Barn. And the building back here is a second town hall built in 1902. And this is a car right in front of it. This was like a little field in between these two buildings there. And this is Niagara Falls Boulevard off in this area here. And this is the front of the second town hall built in 1902. And here's one member of the Kroll family right here skating on ice. This is actually in the flyer that we've created for the event tonight. And I'll pass this around because this might be a better view of it here. That's that picture there. And it's actually my favorite picture out of anything because it's very dynamic for 1916 or so when it was taken. And the lead kid in front there has got this smile on his face that's absolutely unmistakable. And it makes for a really, really fun picture to look at for the period. And then this last picture here is basically the boys in the band. I mean, literally the boys in the band. These are some young men playing pool and at the bar inside of Kroll's Tavern. And by all means, if any of you want to kind of come up and closer or something like that, you can do that too.
The part that we remember facing Niagara Falls Boulevard had like 3 or 4 large windows, and that was the bar room. But then as you come along on the Ward Road side, there was kind of a porch there, and there was another door that went in, kind of toward the end of the building, and they actually had a small store there. They were the first place in the area that had an ice cream freezer, so you could get an ice cream treat. I only know this because one of my great aunts worked there probably around 1990.
And your family lived right there.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, absolutely. And this is the Wheatfield Town Board as it appeared by this time as well. So this is the Honorable Town Board as it was comprised by 1965. Back then, the Town Hall was one of the smaller buildings behind current 7-Eleven on Ward and Niagara Falls Boulevard, which included the earlier St. Johnsburg Fire Company Hall. That was the original hall, and the highway garage of this era. The new Town Hall on Church Road, I should say, in Maple Drive was opened in 1973. And I'm not going to go through all these names exactly, but these are some of the officers of the board at the time. And right where Town Hall is today, the modern day Town Hall, that's where the mole farm was. And here's a picture taken about 1966 or 68, showing the state of it at that point. This house was built around 1870 and had actually more buildings that would be seen in this picture, except what happened to them, Don?
The tornado. The tornado, that's why right through there, took out the great big barn.
Really?
And the chicken coop. We were not even sure. I was probably about, my brother was a baby, so I was probably
You
5
could
or
see it from his
6.
window.
And my mother was 19 the day after I was born, so she wasn't very old then. She didn't know we should have been in the basement. She's got me standing on the kitchen counter, looking out the back window at this tornado, and she's holding my baby brother, and we just watched as it. We're not sure where it came from, but it came right into that farmstead and just ripped. There was a large barn, and it just ripped that to shreds. It just flew everywhere, and the chicken coop. The poor chickens were everywhere. They're in the trees. Thankfully, at that time, there weren't many houses there. What we're looking is now Maple Drive. We're looking down Maple Drive toward the town hall. And then that way is Church Road. And there weren't many houses on this Maple Drive. So it just kind of went across the boulevard, and then dissipated in the fields behind the homes on Ward Road. It just ended. Thank God, because it had gone right down Ward Road.
Oh, yeah.
Torn a lot of residences right apart.
You can see evidence in the trees. The trees on the left have branches.
Yeah, that might very well be.
Yeah.
Looks like they were torn apart.
Yeah, they look good.
St. Johnsburg.
Right, that's St. John.
Wow.
Well, as you're going into the Town Hall campus today, the main drive on the eastern side of the building,
Right through.
you would have gone right through the living room there. There was actually a church pew that sat on the front porch of this,
Yeah, from the Trinity.
the Trinity Church,
of
yeah.
Miracles.
And we have that pew on display inside the Hein House to this day. And that was
Well,
where
we
they
have
just
right
sat.
now where there were 3 churches of Miracles. All Lutheran.
That's all you need to know, they were all
They're all Lutheran.
Right, exactly. See, I'm Catholic, and so I burst into flames if I'd walked through back in those days. That's a little too small to see, but this is the opening reception, actually, for Town Hall in 1973. Again, and these are members of the Wheatfield Community Band. You can tell they're in their white shirts right here, and this is a scout troop in front there, and they're going through the ceremony itself, and they had just raised the flag up. So this is after all the initial invocations and so forth, and the scouts were to put up the flag. We still have this flag in the archive. It's a nice thing to see and hold.
What is that building?
Wheatfield Town Hall. I'm sorry, yeah. We're
That's
faded
what it
there.
says.
That would be just to the right of the mall house.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of looks like a bunker compared to Town Hall's built now. You know, this is the brutalist era. You know, the late '60s, early '70s period. So government buildings were very functional. So they ended up. But it really is a brilliant and beautiful building too. At the same time.
Not really bad for the time.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. It was really good. And actually, this is a program from the opening of it. Actually, here, yes, next year, yeah, 2023. And this is an actual program from that grand opening. And it was custom made, so it's a town seal on one side. You just open it up and you see the whole program in there. And we will be making more of those later on for something special in the future, like our bicentennial eventually in 2036. So this is actually a picture I snuck in here to include Niagara Wheatfield Central School. And this is from, I think, 1978, and here's 4 kids from the music club at the time. You could tell the hair, the clothes, and the rest of it, you know, for their annual Christmas concert, yeah. So maybe that explains the pants, you know? I don't know. But that's a fun picture right there. Okay, so this one right here is of the Texaco station off of Lockport Road and Walmore Road, the South Walmore Road. Is that at that T? That's where the Texaco station was. And this is a classic example, mid-century example of your typical filling station with the lattice work over the top of the entranceway, your maintenance garage, several different mid-50s, late 50s cars, and your star, your Texaco star right there. It is very different now, of course, but again, classic. Note the white lines, by the way, on the telephone pole here, right at the road there. That's to help make sure that you saw the pole rather than slam into it when you're coming off the road. So I noticed that early on. So this is the Bell plant. I'm just going to go past this. Here we go. Because as we get towards, you know, today, a lot of you start to, you know, remember some more of this stuff right here. But this is the interior of the Bell aircraft plant by 1940. And during the height of the Second World War, you're seeing a whole lineup of P-39s, all in various stages of assembly. Of course, Rosa the Riveter was here. All sorts of experts were here, and crafters and machinists, including my great-grandfather actually being in this plant. Shortly after World War II, my grandfather would be in charge of the helicopter division, then being established and expanded. And during the Vietnam War, he was in charge of that.
I worked there in the stock room after the war.
After the war, when was like 40s?
1942, 45,
45, yeah.
45, give or take. I got out in 45 and I went to work at Bell Aircraft, the stock room, handling bars and metal, sheets of metal. Oh, it's just a job.
Sure. And veterans were, of course, employed right off the action, essentially.
We proceeded to make the third stage, a portion of the third stage of Minuteman Intercontinental Ballistic Missile for quite a number of years there. I was a program manager on that for 16 years.
So you were a program manager for that program at Bell.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Also, you can tell the enormity of this place too. I mean, maybe Amazon across the way from it could be this big if and when it gets built, but you know, that's the size we're talking about here. And of course, these are different images from the life of the plant. We're talking about the Huey helicopters from the Vietnam period. You're also talking about the Apollo program, the lander unit, essentially, the whole propulsion, the whole system for that, the liftoff technology, that was developed and implemented here. The supervisor of the town of Wheatfield, I think, not George McGovern, but VP at the time, and Neil Armstrong is right there, standing with this thing.
Hubert Humphrey, isn't it?
Hubert Humphrey, thank you. And other representatives of the Bell organization are in this picture right in the middle there. This is a picture of course, the famous X-1, the prototype device tested in the New Mexico desert in 1948, and this broke the sound barrier, officially for purposed forced propulsion, takeoff, essentially. We had broken the sound barrier a couple of times before with falling actions, like accidental drops that approached or beat the sound barrier, but this is the first time the sound barrier had been purposely broken and broken all the way through by a craft using technology for that purpose. I don't know if you can necessarily tell, but if you remember what the X-1 basically looks like, it would have been orange because it's a prototype craft, and it was purposely designed to look and be in the shape of a bullet, so it would have the same aerodynamics as a bullet, essentially. A specific kind of bullet actually was selected for this, by the way. And that's Larry Bell right here in a typically very stylized pose. He died early, though. I think he passed away in 1958. He was not that old when he passed away, but this is a company that was very personal to him. I'll share one thing real quick. There was an employee that was badly injured on the plant. And of course, he knew all these different guys by names. Of course, again, veterans and other different people, too. He knew them all by name. And some of them had worked with him at Curtiss-Wright before the Bell plant was built up here. My great-grandfather was one of them. And this injured worker says, I can't do this job anymore. I don't know. I know what's going to happen to me. There's no, that kind of social security yet at the time. And he said, look, I'm going to write into your contract that no matter what happens here after me or whatever, you can't be fired. I'll have you do this or that, but they can't fire you. No matter what the union does, because that was a new thing at the time for them, they can't get rid of you. And true to that word, 20 years went by, then he retired.
Wow.
And they downsized in the meantime, lots of changes and so forth, but he remained there the whole time. That's the kind of man he was.
He lost both
What
of
was
his
the other
hands.
plane?
He lost both of his hands.
Just-
Oh, sorry. This one right here, that is, I think, an X3 or X4, one of the two there. And that is one of the bomber planes. What's the number for that? I'm sorry, if you guys remember that. The one, the sort.
And the plane that broke the sound barrier still hangs in the museum in Washington, D.C.
Yep, the Aerospace Museum. Kevin, I'm sorry.
Did the accident affect his arms?
I don't know the nature of the accident. It was just bad enough where he, yeah.
Yeah, these two hands.
Okay.
Buddy could write his signature much better than I could.
Oh, okay, so you remember him. Okay, cool, thank you. So it was an upper arm accident, right? He injured or broke his wrists, right? Something like that?
I work at an area senior center, and there's a gentleman that has told me stories of working there, and he's got similar injuries. So if it is the same gentleman, he's still living, and I work with him every day.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right, well, invite him over here.
Yeah.
By all means, we'll pick them up. And these are just exhibits that we have available at the Niagara Aerospace Museum as we have it today. They're open Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 4 in the afternoon. And not only do they have a number of Cunninghams and Curtiss-Wrights and so forth on display there, but we also have a captured and recovered P-39 craft that was rescued out of a thawed-out Russian lake. And unfortunately, the pilot had a catastrophic engine failure with it in 1941 and crashed into this on the lake, actually on the ice. And then, of course, he went through into the water itself. And through some local knowledge, the people from the museum found out where this was, and they brought it up and out. And a good portion of it, at least the centrifuge there, fuselage is on display there. Not centrifuge, fuselage, I'm sorry, is on display
I didn't know about it, yeah.
inside the museum today. So going back to some of our favorite watering holes, we have the Walmore Inn right here, as it looked in about 1956-58. Note all the cars in front of it here, if you're able to kind of see that. These are cars that date from about the mid-40s through to mid-50s again, and look, you can see how popular that was at the time. The building itself dated back to 1829 or 39, one of those 2 years, and definitely, again, one of the oldest in town.
You used to go in there.
And it's still ever, right?
Right, well, because it was right by the plant. And this is a picture from Hoover's Dairy. This is a picture from about the mid-1920s, and that's what the business used to look like back then. And this is a little postcard that I got from them, and it's their picture. That's a really great
milk
image.
to the doorstep.
Hmm?
That's when Hoover peddled the milk to the doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
They still do,
And they still do.
but they carry it.
This is one of the businesses along Niagara Falls Boulevard. This is what was then a liquor store, and nowadays is a pizzeria and sign-making place. At least they used to make signs there. Now this is the Agway store, the GLF, and this existed on what I call Kearney Hill. It's where Nash Road kind of rises up by Fairmount Park there, and right on the eastern side of it. Now, if you guys remember that, it was a agriculture supply store, essentially.
I remember that.
It's still a business today.
It is, yeah. It just reopened as something else. It'd been closed for several years.
Yes.
Kearney Plumbing was in it for a while.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the outside of the building. This is a donated picture of the outside of it, looking further back of when it was really in service.
Connie Jago's father ran that business. Do you know Connie?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
Her father ran it.
this is Teal's Dairy. As it existed, this is their mid-century building, right off of what is actually now called Old Shawnee Road. It's a part of Shawnee Road that was kind of left to the side as Shawnee Road was realigned with Erie to make a better intersection 20 plus years ago. But this store had actually already closed down by 1989, and it's actually been in a state of decay for a long, long while. It's still there actually, but it's not in the best shape. I don't recommend visiting it. It's awfully depressing, but it's still kind of impressive because you see the chrome plating across the edge of the building that comes out over the entranceway, and you also see the sort of boxy boxy chimney right there, and the whole storefront is right there. They used to serve all sorts of things, anything that you think a dairy would have, ice cream and milk and cheese and butter and so forth. And I'm sure you guys remember all of that.
All kinds of things.
These are 2 milk bottles from it. This is an ice cream box that's actually still around today. Somebody has that. So I took their picture of it, I should say, and had it right there. And this is an old Teal's Dairy magnet showing one of their milk vans right there from this location. Another business in town was the Loveland Farm up until about the 1890s. Here we see their house, which used to exist near Loveland Road, off of Town Line Road, I should say, up in there. And this is an auction poster for their farm when it was broken up in the 1930s or so. And they were selling off livestock and anything else you can imagine. The auctions were typically held on the site. They would be done inside of barns and places like that. Everybody would gather and pick the remains of the business. Now this is about over here. This is my house actually at 6815 Ward Road, and this place it was a whole big stone house. Again, it's hard to tell in this picture, but this house that I live in now is entirely surrounded by stone all the way around. It's not native stone, it was brought up out of Pennsylvania. Alfred Wallonick was a prominent mason up here and a contractor. He was also a Korean War Seabee veteran. And when he and his wife, Mary Jane, got married and settled up in Wheatfield eventually, they moved their business there. And these are pictures of his business signs that I've got yet. There are 2 business signs back there. And the one says Wheatfield Construction Company and mentions his address and the telephone number. And the other one shows off his name and says across the top, "Will built to suit," with his name right there. So we still have those. And he was in business until the 1980s, so from about 1960 to 1980, 85, 88. Now this is the Ted Ron Nightclub here. The Tetra has a really interesting story, honestly. It was right on the line between the city of Niagara Falls and Wheatfield. It used to exist way further back. The main club was about midway in, and there was like an octagon of different things going on behind it, like the dance floor area and so forth. It was said you would practically dance out onto the water. That's how it was all set up. This is a castle-like structure, actually, with the parking right in front of it. And I've got that in this too. I was a little earlier in the presentation. That's got an amazing story right there too. But
My wife and I have a little issue at that place.
Ted
The
Ron?
drum came driving out onto River Road, right into a truck that I was traveling behind. The truck tried to go right up a utility pole.
Oh,
And he came out of that place.
oh boy. Yeah, this is a postcard of it, by the way, right here. This shows you a little more detail as to what the Ted Ron used to be. It was like it was a castle-like structure. This is the road sign that used to be out by the entrance to it. You can hardly figure there was ever anything there now, but because in 1975 it was burned down. We don't know how or heck it happened, but this building had already had a long history, an eclectic one. Not only was it a regular nightclub, but later on it also it was also a biker bar and allegedly a gay bar. Later on, pretty much toward the end.
Hey,
but this
Justin?
thing hosted members of the Buffalo Mafia and movie stars who didn't want to really be seen at that point in the day or something, and all sorts of people were in that building.
Justin, the pillars on the Tetra sign, are those the ones that still exist on River Road?
No, actually, and you bring up a good point there. That has to do with something else that was there way back when. Those two, there are 2 tall brick pillars that pretty much stand alien from everything else around them on River Road, about midway up the street on the river side before you get to Tetra. And I believe those were entrance markers for like a theme park that was there for a while. It was a little resort that was there for about 20 odd years. Don, do you remember anything like that?
I don't know anything personally about it, but I heard that it was like a little amusement park.
Yeah. Didn't last for too long, maybe 20 or so years, up until about the 40s or so. Maybe actually more like the 30s, the Depression era, took away a lot of these things. But yeah, that's what those brick pillars are meant to, or were originally for.
Road sign by the road there, the road sign, it's just about where Williams Road comes out, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Williams Road. If you come down Williams Road and you take a right off of that towards Niagara Falls, just a few hundred feet down, not even, right before the line, you'll see an unremarkable road to your left with old telephone poles going all the way down the side. They don't service anything anymore, really, but that's all that remains of what used to service. Electricity. And if you go further in, it's private property, but of course I snuck in at one point. It's very overgrown anyways. And there's remnants of brick plant and garden features right there, and a couple of abutments that are both flipped over and collapsed, but they used to hold torches that would stand there and glow like that. And you'd come in, and there was what remains basically tells a story there too. There's a parking lot right after that, and there's a diagonal wall that goes like this with the property line And as you go further in, the lot would expand, and you parked your cars in there. And just after that parking lot, it was an island with vegetation, and you see the club just after that. It sat right in the center of the property. And then, of course, the rest, as I described, the dance floor and so forth, to the river. There's a duck blind there now. Now, this barn used to stand on Shawnee Road. It's gone now. It's been taken down about midway up the street, essentially to the right. But on the side of it, I noticed that this was still there. Nail pouch tobacco. These advertisements were all over the place. There's another one that looks just like this off of Hopkins Road in Amherst, up in that area. Campbell Boulevard. I'm sorry, Campbell Boulevard. Another building like that has this advertisement on it. And it survived throughout all these years until the Barnes Demolition, just about 2 months after I took this picture.
Used to store their hay in that barn. Coythons.
Yes, that's they're just across the street from the
Yeah,
Coythons.
kind of kitty corner.
The farmers made a little extra money by letting them put the sign on their barn. If you can place where I'm living right now, that empty lot to the, coming this way, south, next to the house. Right at the corner there where the next house is, there was a great big Genesee 12-horse ale sign. It was huge. And my grandfather used to get $40 a year for that.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
It was so neat, it even had like the glass reflectors in and around it to make it shine up at night.
Back in those days, $40 was a lot.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, no, really. That's another good point too. Yep.
I believe that stood one property over from my family's because the Don and Ruth Martin lived one more property over, and that barn stood right over there.
Yeah.
So this is today's Olympia, but back in the mid-century, it was the Franklin Inn. And this was actually a house originally. It was just a post-World War II house that was quickly adopted by the early 1950s into a restaurant, essentially, within the house. And then it was expanded to the east more to have a larger dining room facility and so forth, although the original house's kitchen was still there and being used to cook for all these people, and expanded too a bit. And then this is the house next door over there. And this is the interior, if you can kind of see what that looked like. And this is from a postcard of the period. And look at the stylized furniture, the late Art Deco style, almost a space age look to it at this point, of curtains and furniture and so forth, and the bar, as it appeared at the time too. That has been altered several times since into the Olympia we know now.
Is the bar still the same? It looks similar.
It is actually the core of the bar itself, like the silhouette of it, the material, that's all still there. Yeah, that bar is still the original bar, but of course everything around it has been changed around. Yeah.
We have good French toast at breakfast.
That's true. This is the Summit Park Mall, of course. As I mentioned, it opened in 1971. This picture was taken by 1973. The Williams Farm used to be there. There was a whole other thing that was there before. And this is the interior, the main feature of the Summit Mall. Honest to God, it probably had the best fountain feature out of any mall in this area, really. And it also had what was very ubiquitous in public buildings at the time, and my favorite thing about it was the conversation pit.
Yeah.
Okay, a sunken area where you kind of hung out with people out of the way of the crowds and the mess and whatever. And it had plants around it and so forth. And when we were kids, me and my sister used to run in and out of it because it was so much fun. And there was a bridge, of course, that went across the fountain feature in the center there. And the fountain itself, the main one, used to shoot all the way up to the ceiling and down like this. It would flow, and then really shoot way up and then down again like that. And kids used to, of course, go across it as we did. You could even feel it kind of bouncing a little as you went across. But apparently kids would also get their head stuck in the bars of this thing.
Oh.
And there was a commenter on the Facebook history, the Wheatfield History Facebook group page, who practically raised his hand digitally at the other end with an emoji, an embarrassed emoji face there. And he said, I was one of those kids that got his head stuck in the rail. And there's a policeman who verifies this again when he says, yeah, we used to go over there and respond to something stupid like the kid getting his head stuck in the rail. You know. That was a thing unique to the Summit Mall. Here's
McCrory's would have been the store that was right across from,
McCrory's.
I believe.
Yeah. That was one of the early stores in that actually. And this is another picture of the same feature there. And McCrory's was right in this area here.
Yeah.
This is the Wahanki hotel and restaurant right there. That sits where Gary DiMattio's place is now, and a couple of other big houses. On the other end of town between North Tonawanda and here
Used to
proper,
go there.
and that was a big one.
Kids.
There was a custom at the different dining spots inside where they would take your picture with your permission, hopefully, and as one person said. And they also had a custom of giving you a white or red rose to the ladies at the table. So they had little things like that. And the upstairs is where you could stay overnight and welcome certain friends on occasion too. So, you know. This is the ribbon cutting for the Summit Mall, again, 1971. There's Supervisor Stanley Brzezinski there, helping to hold the big pair of scissors there. And the other building there, this is a collection of businesses in the town, basically, you know, real quick. And that's what was Moeller's General Store, and at that point had a gas station in front of it. That was 1918, that picture there. The westernmost third of Solidays today is of that building. That portion dates to around 1880, as far back as that.
Maybe even earlier.
And maybe even earlier, yeah,
Because
again, he lived near
When
that.
the church, and we don't want to get into this here with Lutherans, but when the church split happened, St. John's Church was actually padlocked by the sheriffs at one point, and the services were held up in the second floor. You can still see today, they had to save the front part of the building because of it being so close to the road. That was the only way they could build the rest of the building around it,
Right.
is what I understand. Something to do with zoning or something.
And technical details, when J.T. Wheatfields did the demolition, and they were the first new restaurant since Janix to build there. So this is the early 2000s when Janix folded and J.T. Wheatfields took over. Again, nowadays it's Solidays. So rather interesting ideas. This is a funny part of it. Several ideas have happened or almost happened to the town of Wheatfield. What most people don't actually know used to or would be proposed here was the occasional idea for a Welland-style canal. A Welland canal-like structure would have gone from about here, the Tonawandas, and would have coursed its way. These are three different potential routes at the time. This is the late 50s when this was being thought up. And there are three different routes. Two of the proposed routes were going to go through the town of Wheatfield. The most likely route really is probably the straightest, line, and that would have gone